I want to say welcome to One Church to everybody, wherever you may be watching from. So great to have you here. And we're in this tribe series. And, whenever you're watching this is a good thing about these days is we are recording things, we're putting it online. And, it's going to live forever, hopefully. And, somebody may be watching this 10, 20 years down the road. And yet, how many of you know God has a way, regardless of when you hear something, He has a way of making it timely. He has a way of speaking right to you where you're at. And, the day we live in, though, where we're at right now is we are in the middle of of a pandemic, of a COVID-19. This is going to go down like world history, and our kids and grandkids are going to study about it and read about it. And if you happen to be watching this as an element of world history, I want you to know that during the COVID-19, the body of Christ did not bat down the hatches and play defense. We continue to play offense. In fact, we believe that times like this are the church's time. We think we were built for this. This is what we're all about. And everything from, what's going on with COVID-19 to even the things happening right now in terms of the civil rights and what's happening in terms of race and culture wars in our world. We are the place that people come together. We are the place that we find unity at the foot of the cross. And we don't feel bad about the fact that there's hard times. I mean, how many of you know in Mark chapter 4, Jesus takes the disciples and He takes them through a storm. And when they finally come out of the storm, Jesus doesn't say, "My bad." Jesus doesn't go, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I led you all into a storm. I'm so sorry. It was so bad. I apologize for the pandemic. I apologize for the tough time." No, Jesus said, "Oh ye of little faith. Did you think I wasn't here? Did you lose track of the fact that I was with you, that I won't leave you or forsake you?" Come on, we're in Mark 4. The book's not going to be done now. We still got chapter 5 and chapter 6. And Jesus was at such peace, He fell asleep in the boat during a storm. So we're not freaked out by storms. We're not freaked out by tough times. This is where we step up into the purpose that God has created us. So let's keep pulling together. Let's keep pulling together. Let's keep pulling together. I want to take some time in this tribe series today, and I want to share a message with you. And I want to really tackle 3 questions. And the first question is, why are we so divided? When I say we, I mean our country. I mean, in some ways, Christians are divided, churches are divided. Sometimes families are divided. Anywhere you see polarization or division, why does that happen? I want to talk about that. The second is I want to answer the question, what's truly sacred? If we're going to fight for something, we're going to fight for a sacred thing, we got to know what's really sacred. What's worth fighting for is the third question. What is worth fighting for? I just want to come out of the gate and tell you what my intentions are, not only today, but every time that I share God's word, whenever I preach, whenever I put out a piece of content on social media or whatever it might be. My intention is to help people to get a clearer picture of God. I want to take His word. I don't want to confuse you. I don't feel that it's my job to make simple things complex. I feel it's my job to make complex things simple. I don't want you to leave today and go, "Man, that was a good message. I didn't understand it. It was confusing. He used a lot of big words. I got a headache, but man, that was good. Boy, that was real good." No, I want you to walk out clear and understanding God in a more clear way. Well, how do you understand God more clearly? Is you understand Jesus more clearly. In fact, Jesus says in John 14:9, "Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father." If you want to know what God looks like, you look at Jesus. And so the best way to have a clear picture of God is to get a clear picture of Jesus. So what I want to do is I want to talk about Jesus, and I want to talk about the world that He walked into. And the good thing is, when you look at the scripture, there's a lot of what Jesus walked through in terms of the society, the culture, the world, the context that's not that different than ours. Some of it's different, the communication modes and some of the systems and things were different, but people were the same. Like there's a lot of things like dynamics in the culture that were the same then as they are now. And so we see how Jesus existed in the culture. What I want you to understand is the world that Jesus came into, the world He was born into, was an us versus them world. Us versus them. The us in Jesus' world was the nation of Israel. And when Jesus came into the world, he came into what's called the Old Covenant. In fact, you know your Bible's divided into two parts, right? You got the Old Testament, New Testament. Well, the word testament really means covenant. So it's Old Covenant, New Covenant. And the Old Covenant was designed for an us versus them mentality. It was the nation of Israel were the chosen people, and they were separated from the world. In fact, when you look at the law, the Old Testament law was 613 laws, many of which were designed not necessarily morally, they were designed to segregate or to separate the nation from other nations. So it was like, hey, other nations eat this, don't eat it. Other nations wear these clothes, don't wear these clothes. Other nations do their hair this way. I'm not even kidding. This is stuff they do their hair this way, they do their beard this way. You don't do your hair, your beard that way. So the entire thing was to separate the nation of Israel from the Amalekites or the Amorites or the Philistines or whoever. They were separate and different. And when Jesus shows up in the world, there was a huge us versus them mentality. The us versus them that he walked into was the nation of Israel versus Rome. And the Romans had captivity over the nation of Israel. They had them in bondage. And so he walks into this mentality. And what they didn't understand is that ultimately Jesus came to create a whole different paradigm, frankly, diametrically opposed to the Old Covenant. Their hope was that he would, within the Old Covenant, come and elevate the nation of Israel over other nations. But Jesus said, no, instead of you being separate from other nations, in the New Covenant, you're going to go into all the world. And you're going to preach the gospel, and there's going to be no longer divisions. It's going to be a supernatural work of the Holy Spirit that's actually going to take the gospel, the work of Jesus, to all people everywhere. You're going to have to totally change your paradigm. And so when Jesus walked in, he walks into a group of people with a serious us versus them mentality. Now here's what I'm going to tell you. Our world still thrives on an us versus them mentality. In fact, even sometimes the church, like Christians, operate more Old Covenant than New Covenant. We think us versus them. And this is why we are so incredibly divided. And I'm gonna show you how it happens. It happens when in the us versus them mentality, people grab a pitchfork, okay? We know what the pitchfork symbolizes. It represents a group of people who are really ticked off and they're willing to fight for it, right? Back in the day, if something wasn't going right and we wanted to fight, we grab the farmers would grab their pitchforks and they would go to battle. And people are still grabbing pitchforks, by the way. They're still us versus them. It's everywhere. There's us versus them at your work. Sometimes it's management versus the workforce. Sometimes there's us versus them in the family. And it's these members of the family versus these members of the family. And sometimes it's the parents versus the kids. And sometimes the siblings. And you got to pick a side. And whose team are you on? And who are you aligned to? Sometimes in the church, there's an us versus them mentality. There's culture wars, us versus them. Black lives matter, all lives matter, blue lives matter. Everybody grabs a pitchfork and it's a us versus them. Politics, Democrats, Republicans, us versus them mentality. And so when you think of this, the reason that we become so stubborn and so divided and we dig our heels in so deep and sometimes are willing to die on the battlefield is because if you look at the pitchfork and you think about what it represents some serious stuff. I'm gonna give you two different mindsets that go with the pitchfork mentality. The first mindset is the revolution mindset. The revolution. The revolution mindset is a noble mindset. It's a change mindset. The revolutionary looks at the world and looks at the culture and says, it's gotta change. This is not right. And we'll do whatever we have to do to make it change. We'll form a coup. We will do anything we have to do. And if you think back to the beginning of our country, we had a change, a mutiny, an uprising, a group of people that said, you know what? No taxation without representation. We're gonna fight England, and we're gonna fight the redcoats. We're gonna do guerrilla warfare if we have to, and we're willing to give our lives, we're willing to die for this. And so we're gonna write the Declaration of Independence. We are revolutionaries, and we went into the Revolutionary War, and we fought, and people gave their lives, and they were willing to die because they saw a change that needed to happen. Think about the civil rights movement, right? In the 60s, you have what? No justice, no peace. This is not right what's happening right now. And people were willing to stand up and to fight and to say there is a revolution that needs to take place, and we're willing to give up our lives for it. There's tremendous energy in the revolutionary mindset. Then there's another mindset. There's another mindset, and it's the last stand mentality, the last stand. The last stand mentality is about heritage. The last stand mentality is about protecting and preserving and defending. And it's like you remember the story in American history of the Alamo down in San Antonio? You know, there's this group of people, they have no chance, they're overpowered, but they're in this fort and they're like, we're the last stand, we're the last stand. Like, we're willing to die in this fort, we're gonna fight like crazy, and if we don't fight, we don't keep fighting, and we're the last stand. Like, there's nobody behind us, and if we don't fight for this, it's all gonna go to hell in a handbasket. And I'm telling you, organizations, they have the last stand mentality. There's people in the church with a last stand mentality. They're afraid, well, man, I got to stand up for this tradition, or I got to stand up for this style, or I got to stand up for this system, or I got to stand up for this structure. And if we're going to lose these things, and if these other people take over, if these revolutionaries take over, we're the last stand. So if we don't fight, we're done. And so they'll fight like the Alamo. And so why are we so divided? Well, we're divided because in our businesses, our families, in our country, in our churches, we've got two different groups of people with pitchforks, and they're all full of righteous anger. And they're all very noble in their energy to go, I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna preserve and I'm gonna protect, but no, I'm gonna bring a change. And so just welcome to the United States of America. You look up and everybody's got pitchforks fighting. And I've gotta say, like, we have volumes of history that have been written on the pitchfork mentality. And I think Dr. King said it best when he said, an eye for an eye, everybody ends up blind. So what I'm gonna encourage us to do is to pivot with ultimately what Jesus wanted to do, was to change into a new mindset, a new covenant mindset, and to put down the pitchforks. Let's put down the pitchforks. Before we fully put them down, I do wanna say, we're gonna borrow some mindsets from here, and we're gonna come up with something new. What I wanna borrow in terms of mindset is there are some things that are sacred that are worth defending. So we're gonna borrow from the last stand mentality. There's some things worth preserving. There's some things that are sacred we have to fight for. And then we're gonna borrow some from the revolutionary mindset, which is there are some new things that need to happen. There are some changes that need to take place. And we need to make sure that we know which is which. I wanna talk a little bit on this next question is, what is truly sacred? Okay, let's change our mindset. We'll put these pitchforks down. And by the way, these are heavier than they look. I know they look like they're plastic, but those are kind of heavy. All right, I'm gonna do a new mentality, a new analogy. We're gonna just flip it for a moment. We're gonna press pause on that one. And this is a baby. This is a bathtub, and I want you to imagine bath water. I didn't want to do it because it would have just made, complicated things for me, but just imagine there's bath water. So we have baby, we have a bath, and we have bath water. And when you look within this analogy, immediately you know what's sacred, right? The baby's sacred. The bathtub is not sacred. The bathtub is just a tool. It's a structure. It's a facility. It's something here to facilitate what's sacred. The child, why do we put the baby in the bath and the bath water? To clean the child, so that this is part of hygiene. This is part of health. But what's sacred is the baby. We need to understand through the new covenant, through Jesus, what is sacred. Because at the turning point in the us versus them mentality in the old covenant, the nation of Israel had created sacred artifacts or sacred facilities or sacred structures. For example, the temple. The temple was sacred, the physical building of the temple. There were fights over the temple. You didn't mess with the temple. In fact, even in the Old Covenant, the way God related to the temple, there was at the center of the temple was the Holy of Holies. So not just anybody could go into the Holy of Holies. You had to be a certain select person to be able to go into the Holy of Holies. And so the relationship to the facade, to the facility, was like a big deal. And so when it comes into the new covenant, they're still in that mindset, and Jesus completely affects that. He changes it. And then Paul, as he's writing new doctrine for the new covenant, helps us understand the paradigm shift. And this is what he says in 1 Corinthians 3:16 and 17. He says, don't you realize that all of you together are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God lives in you? You used to think that the sacred thing was the tub. You used to think that the sacred thing was the system or the structure or the facility. But he says, no, it's not the temple. He said, now you are the temple. You are the sacred thing. Watch this, verse 17, he says, if anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. To which the old covenant, old-minded people would have said, yeah, you better believe it. You mess with the temple, you mess with God. You mess with the bull, you get the horns. You better not mess with the Holy of Holies. You better not mess with our system. You better not mess with our structure. And he says, yeah, God will destroy that person. But then he keeps going. He says, for God's temple is sacred, and you together are that temple. In other words, who is sacred is people. The sacred is a who, not a what. We're not afraid to tear out a bathtub. We're not afraid to tear out a bathtub, to throw out a bathtub, to change a bathtub. Sometimes we outgrow a bathtub. Sometimes the bathtub is antiquated. We're not gonna shed tears for a bathtub because the bathtub is not sacred. What's sacred is people. He says, you are the temple. You are the temple. You see, what we have to understand is what Jesus does in the new covenant is there is no more us versus them. No more us versus them. Now I want to be clear. There is an us and there's a them. The us is the tribe. The us is the body of Christ. He says, you are the temple. Who's he speaking to? He's speaking to new covenant believers, people who have accepted Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Now, you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are the housing. You are the housing of Jesus. His Spirit lives inside you and produces fruit in your life. You are part of a tribe. But it's not us versus them anymore. In fact, the shift, the total shift in this is that instead of it being us versus them, now we love them, because them is the world. And what we understand is with the us versus them is in the new covenant. We were them. You no longer have any human enemies. You don't have any human enemies. There are inmates and former inmates. There are inmates and former inmates. And the former inmates are highly driven to help the current inmates find the only one who can set the captive free. Okay? Total paradigm shift into the world. So there's not us versus them. In fact, when we think about people, you need to understand that when you look at somebody and you see evil, our battle is not against flesh and blood. It says in Ephesians 6, we are not fighting flesh and blood enemies. Put down the pitchfork. You don't have flesh and blood enemies. He says what we have, he says you're still opposing, but you're opposing evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world, against evil spirits in heavenly places. This doesn't mean, I want to be very clear about this, this doesn't mean that we never oppose anyone, because we do oppose. Sometimes we do stand up to people. We do stand up to bullies. We do stand up to sin. But it's a difference in the way that we look at somebody, the way that we think about somebody. We talked a couple weeks ago about when Paul stood up to Peter because he was being caught up in hypocrisy. Man, you're doing evil right now. You know better than this. And because of this, you're treating the Gentiles differently when it's just you and them versus when you're around your comrades and your brothers, and now you treat them in a different way. When you know there's a different covenant, you know it's a different situation. So what does he do? He opposes him, he stands up to him, but he doesn't make an enemy out of him. In fact, what Paul does is he sees that Peter has been captivated. You've been captivated by the enemy. You're being influenced by the enemy, that there's evil in you. And part of the reason that we don't ever become superior or be on a high horse or look down our nose at people is because we understand that there's evil inside of us, and we understand what we've been delivered from. Like, let me help you understand who us is and what's happened with us. In Ephesians 2:1-3, it says, once you were dead because of your disobedience and many sins. Once you were an inmate, once you were incarcerated, once you were captured by sin. He said you used to live that way. Your lifestyle reflected that, just like the rest of the world. When you look out in the world and you see people who are controlled by evil, they're not your enemy, they're an inmate. And you are an inmate. And what you want for them is for them to be free. And so instead of me getting on my high horse to prove I'm more right than you or grabbing a pitchfork to fight you, I pray, and Lord, how are you going to use me? Because I know what it's like to live like that. He said, hey, you were obeying the devil, the commander of the powers of the unseen world. He's the spirit at work in the hearts of those who refuse to obey God. And Paul's making the point here. He's saying, look, you know what that's like. You walked a mile in those shoes. He says, all of us used to live that way, following the passionate desires and inclinations of our sinful nature, verse 4. But God, who is so rich in mercy, busted us out. He loved us so much that even though we were dead in our sin, even though we were sentenced to death, he gave us life when he raised Christ from the dead. Watch this parenthetically. It is only by God's grace that you've been saved. There's only inmates and former inmates. That's it. Inmates and former inmates. So there's no us versus them. It's we are called to reach people. I'm saying this to you because you only have so much energy, friend. You only have so much juice. You better pick your battles. You better know what's sacred. Don't waste your life fighting for a system or a structure or a style or something that's inanimate, something that is not sacred. People are sacred. And he says, how do I take that mindset? Well, I have to think about the fact of who I was and the evil that was in me and the way my life was controlled. You need to recalibrate your mindset when you look at the people in the world and the people in your life to be reminded of what you've been forgiven from, of what Jesus has done in your life. In fact, Paul is so humble in Galatians 2:20. He says like this. He said, hey, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. If you see me doing something good, don't pat me on the back because it's not me. It's Christ living in me. It's not even me. It's not even me. So the us understands that we're simply former inmates. We have been saved and we've been forgiven and we've been given God's love. The pitchfork mentality is dangerous because you have to understand how easy it is with a pitchfork to become so convinced that you're right. And I'm gonna say this, I'm not standing here, on some high horse myself. I've grabbed many a pitchfork in my day, and I gotta tell you, it feels good. It feels really good. It feels really good. I like to have a pitchfork because, and what I really like is to get a few other people that have the same color pitchfork, and we can all violently agree with how right we are. Because the pitchfork mentality is all about being right. And we're so right, and we're so smart. Everybody else is so stupid. And we're so enlightened, and everybody else is so obtuse. And we got it all right. I mean, I love to have a pitchfork and to get a group of people. And by the way, old Facebook and Twitter and everybody, they helped you out because they figured out algorithms to get you with other pitchfork people who also violently agree with you. And then every once in a while, somebody sneaks in with a different pitchfork, and then it fires up all these pitchfork people. And then we all just claw each other's, we just stab each other in the comment section. But I can find enough people that we all think we're right. This is soothing, honestly. It feels good. I thrive off of this, okay? And guess what? In Acts 9, There was a dude with a pitchfork. His name was Paul. And it says that Paul was so stubborn and dogmatic and convinced that his pitchfork was the right one, that it says in Acts 9:1, he was eager to kill. Eager. I'm willing to kill. I know that sucked the air out of the room, but I'm willing to kill. There are certain scenarios that you give me, I'm like, yeah, I'd kill for that. Just being honest with you. Like, I mean, you come to my house, you threaten my family, I'm willing to kill for certain things. You guys are like, what are we doing here right now? And the man has a pitchfork. Okay, don't judge me, all right? There's some of you, all of you would kill for some things, right? There are certain things I'm willing to kill. I'm not eager to kill for anything. There's nothing I'm eager to kill for. Paul had a pitchfork and was so convinced that he was doing the will of God that he was eager to kill in verse 1. And he's on his way on what he thinks is a mandate from God to go crush out the movement of Jesus, because he thought Jesus was a traitor and a heretic and a lunatic, and he thought that Jesus' disciples needed to be squashed out and murdered. So he's on his way on the road to Damascus with his pitchfork and his eagerness to kill, and is convinced 100% that he's right, until a light from heaven knocks him on his can and says, Saul, why are you persecuting me? So in a moment, all of a sudden he realizes, dude, I was so sure I was right and I couldn't have been more wrong. Are you sure you want to live with this? Is this how you want to live? Do you want to live the pitchfork life? Because I don't think that's what Jesus intended for you. I think what Jesus intended for us to do is to know what's sacred, to put it down, and to realize that, like, God wants to use you for something bigger than just being right politically. God has a bigger plan for you than that you're able to win every argument, to win the battle of rightness all the time. I mean, think about this. Think about how Jesus saw people. When Jesus is being brutalized, beaten by a group of people with a pitchfork that were sure they were right, he looks at them, his abusers, and he says, Father, forgive them. They don't even know what they're doing. They don't even know what they're doing. They have no idea. Jesus, when he saw the ones who were abusing him, he saw in their eyes, that's not them. They don't even know. That's evil working inside of them. Jesus was upset with the evil. He wasn't against the person. In fact, he loved the person so much, he was willing to die. And then he instructs us in Matthew 5, 43, 44. He says, hey, you've heard the law that says love your pitchfork and hate everybody else's pitchfork. He says, I got a different law for you. I got a different rule for you. He says, I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. You got to see them differently. It's not us versus them. It's us loving them. Paul says in Corinthians, let love be your highest goal. This is not touchy-feely. This is hard. This is tough. But we're not fighting flesh and blood. We're not fighting flesh and blood. Listen, God loved the world so much, he sent his son. And his son loved the world so much, he sent you. And he sent us. So the question is, in this day, with all the pitchforks and all the mobs and everybody who's upset, how are you going to live within this new covenant with this mandate and this mindset that we have as the body of Christ? How should we relate? Well, number one, we need to understand how we end up divided is when we root ourselves in our nobility against the last stand or the revolution. Bottom line is we need both. We need to protect some things, sacred things. What's sacred? People are sacred. People are sacred. Systems are not sacred. Buildings are not sacred. Structures are not sacred. Styles are not sacred. It can all be torn down and changed. You know, it's interesting. My wife and I, my family, we live in a community that's been growing a lot. And so they build a new school in our community. And The reason they built the school is because it's growing so fast, there's not room for all the kids. And the old building was very old, and it wasn't technologically capable or even built to train and teach kids for this age and the way that education works now. And so they tore it down. They shattered the tub and they built a new one. Would it have been right to go, but that was where I went to school. Doggone it, I had my first kiss over there in that corner, I aced a math test in that there room over there, I hit a three-pointer to win the game over there. Yeah, where we used to do them school dances. Well, that was where I was crowned homecoming king. We can't tear this down. It's sacred. So what are we going to do? Spend the whole time trying to retrofit this building? It's going to cost us twice the amount of money and still not service the need? No, the building's not sacred. The structure is not sacred. The system's not sacred. The people are sacred. So our community said, hey, great memories in that building, but our memories are not bigger than our visions. We're going to tear down the structure. It's not sacred. People are sacred. People are sacred. And the church needs to hear that. People are sacred. People are what matters. What's the bathwater? The bathwater needs changed every day, all the time. The bathwater is your mind, your mindset. We looked last week at Romans 12:2 that says, hey, do not copy the behaviors and the customs of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, empty the bathwater every day. How foolish would it be to go, I want to keep the same mindset all the time, and so I'm going to just keep taking my beautiful little baby here, and I don't want to change this bathwater because I'm kind of attached to this mentality. No, Paul says, listen, in Romans 12, he says, when you're in the world, you're going to get dirty. You're going to get the customs of the world on you. You're around it. It's on your phone. It's on your TV. It's in your neighborhood. It's there. So you're going to end up off course. He says, you got to renew your mind every day. You better drain this bathwater every day and put pure water. Put the word of God, revelation from heaven. God, what are you saying? I need to be calibrated to the mind of God so I see things the way he does. Because if I don't, I'll end up back in us versus them. And we have Christians all over the world that are more rooted in the old covenant than they're the new covenant. They're busy creating competitions and competitors, and they're more concerned with rightness than righteousness. There's a difference between rightness and righteousness. When you look at what is righteousness? What is new covenant righteousness? New covenant righteousness is you've been declared righteous not by works, not by anything you did. It wasn't because you were right. It was in spite of the fact that you were wrong. Because of what Jesus did, he made you right with God. It's like if you did me dirty, what you did was wrong, but I forgive you, so we made it right. It's all right. It's right between us. Yeah, but I feel bad, man, I did you dirty. It was wrong, but it's all right. You're right. It's all right because I've forgiven you. I made it right. You're in right standing. Our righteousness is we've been made right with God through Jesus. We've been made right. So what's my life about? What's your life about? What are new covenant believers about? We're about helping current inmates find righteousness through the only one who can set the captive free. And I got to tell you, pitchforks are all about rightness. I'm right. We can make a pitchfork out of anything. A mask can be a pitchfork and a mask, and I'm right. You're not going to take my personal liberties, and I'm right. And then others, well, no, but I'm right because it's not about personal liberties more than it's about public health. And we can grab pitchforks and we can just get real mad and fight each other. I mean, is that the world you want to live in? Is that the world that we're called to lead? No way. But the pitchfork mentality is totally obsessed around right. And I'm going to tell you, you only have so many comments you can make. You only have so many posts you can reshare. You only have so many battles you can fight. You only have so many conversations in you. You only have so much empathy. You only have so much energy. You only have so much time. How are you going to invest it? What battles are worth fighting? What's worth fighting? Am I fighting for a structure? No, I'm not. I'm going to drain the dirty water every day, and I'm going to renew my mind every day around the principles of God and around the Word of God. And I'm going to allow His Spirit to purify my heart and to remind me who I am and to remind me where He brought me and to help me see people through His eyes and to remind me of what's sacred. And then I'm going to focus on righteousness, not anything that I've earned. I can't boast about it. I can't brag about it. It's not superiority. I didn't buy it for myself. Jesus purchased it. And so now my righteousness and the righteousness of other people, helping them find Jesus, becomes the center of my life. So I don't want to say or do anything that would sacrifice my ability or an opportunity to help people find Jesus. I don't have a prescription for you today. I can't necessarily give you like what you need to say or do, because sometimes it means you got to stand up and sometimes it means you got to stand down. Sometimes it means that you got to oppose somebody and sometimes you got to be long-suffering. Sometimes it means you got to give a little bit more grace and sometimes it means you got to speak a little bit more truth. I'm just saying, don't get in the flesh and don't grab the pitchfork. Go to God. Lord, what do you want me to see? Lord, what do you want me to say? Lord, help me not conform to the pattern of the world. Renew my mind. I end with this. Our staff meets every Monday, and these days it's been the Zoom calls. So we do like a staff meeting, tactical meeting, and usually they don't let me talk in these meetings, because I'll mess up all the tactics. But they let me talk a couple weeks ago. Hey, Greg, you got anything to say? And what I said to our team, because we're picking plans and everything, and we're like everybody else. We're, Lord, what are we doing? And should we come back? And how fast? And how do you do this right? And so I said to our team, I said, listen, whatever we do is going to be wrong. And whatever we do is going to be right. But it really doesn't matter. What matters is people. What matters is people. What matters is we do this together. In a healthy family, healthy families can go through highs, lows, being broke together, being hungry together, being successful together. We lose together, we win together, we fight together, we cry together, we're wrong together, we're right together. Sacred people are sacred. And God has called us to understand that He created every person sacred. And within our tribe, we pull together as us. But then as we look into the world, we understand that we were them and we want to help reach them. And we don't want to do anything or say anything or be anything that's going to push them further away. So Lord, I need you to tell me what you want me to do. But I know what you don't want me to do. You don't want me to grab a pitchfork. Lord, help me to be your vessel. Here's what I want you to do as we close out. I want you to just let the Lord speak to you through this really simple picture, right? It's a baby doll. You're like, how's God going to speak to me through a baby doll? I know He's that great. He can do it, okay? But this baby doll, this bathtub, this imagined water, I want you to think about what is God saying to you, and maybe it's for Him to remind you or to show you what's sacred. Maybe it's to show you a structure that needs to change. As the baby grows, we don't keep this tub, we outgrow the tub. What is God wanting you that you've been thinking is sacred for you to go, it's not sacred, it's not as important as I've been making it. Or maybe there's a renewing of the mind, a bathwater that needs drained and something fresh that God wants to have. But right now, why don't you just take a moment, get quiet wherever you're at, and allow the Lord to speak to you on this message.